Well, I'm excited to have Georgia Monroe back on the Flower Podcast. Welcome, Georgia.
Hey, Scott, good morning. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you and I have kept in touch ever since we did the episode earlier last year, and I want to encourage any of our listeners, if you haven't heard the episode with Georgia, I would strongly recommend going back to hear her story and learn about her farm, because today we're really hopefully going to dig deeper on some really good topics that are really important for flower farmers, and I just appreciate your time so much. With 2020 being such a ridiculous year and so many people trying to figure things out, I really want to hear from you kind of how did you pivot? How did you approach it? What does that look like for you?
Absolutely. So we have survived 2020. Praise the Lord. Oh, we're recording this the week of Christmas, and
Right.
So it's crazy. Like the year has flown by in some ways, and then in other ways, like man, it really drug on. But overall, I think it really flew by for us. And I went back and looked at when we recorded this. I think we recorded in January, and it launched like the first week of March.
Yeah,
and
sounds right.
So right before the pandemic, and so here we are. So our model has changed tremendously this year. And so starting in March, that was, our prime season. And so we got through, Valentine's Day. So then we had Easter and Mother's Day. And so here in South Texas, we were deemed essential. So we did shut down our operations for about 2 weeks. We kind of kept everything under wraps. And then, our flower shop sales, our sales to designers, they really shut down for several months, and really the whole year it was much less than normal before this year. And so we started doing a lot of retail porch pickups and deliveries. And so we had our website in place prior to the pandemic, which I'm so thankful for. I think we've had our website now with Barn to Door about 1.5 years. And so we had that in place almost a full, maybe 6 months before. My dates are getting messed up, but we had our website in place. And so we were able to start taking orders through our website, and we were doing porch pickup at the farm. And then we did deliveries in College Station and kind of the surrounding communities. So that way we could still adhere to our lockdown mandates. And so I think we were under lockdown for about 2 months, maybe. It was a long time that there was very minimal activity. And so we went through, we even had to skip we do photography sessions on our farm. And so a lot of our bluebonnet, we missed the bluebonnet season, which was a big moneymaker for us last year. And then everything was just very minimalized. So doing those deliveries in College Station, almost killed me. We were probably doing 30 a day.
Wow.
And it was me and another teammate. I think we were kind of splitting it up, trying to do those deliveries. And so we learned a lot through all of that. We had a great Mother's Day. We were able to have really good sales through that. And then, the summer kept going on and the kids were home. Everyone was trying to do online school, which was mass chaos. And so for me personally, I was trying to teach. I have a little girl who's 6 years old. We were doing first grade. So I was trying to manage all of it at once. And I think I survived about 6 weeks of online school before I threw up my hands and said we had to hire a babysitter, basically, just to take over the online school so that way I could focus on my Mother's Day sales, which was just mass chaos. And so that way I could focus on that. So Mother's Day was good. And then as the year kind of went on, we saw that the pandemic was going to be longer than anyone ever anticipated. So, and we had fields of flowers. Everything that we do is 6 to 12 months in advance planned. And so we don't quit. So, I pivoted, and in the past, we've done pick your own, like at a very small scale. It was like I would plant maybe 3,000 sunflowers, and we would have like a sunflower festival weekend, which did very well. But since people were at home and they wanted to look for outside activities, we put together a pick your own. I think it was 3 or 4 days a week. So during the summertime, wow. So it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So 4 days we did morning sessions and evening sessions. So people could come out and pick their flowers. So everyone had to go through our website. So it was all by reservations only. And we have about 1.5 acres dedicated to pick your own. So we felt like 4 groups, 4 carloads of people was a good number so people could space out.
Per session, like per morning and then per evening again.
Right, per hour. Okay. So it was about 20 people per hour. So that's 4 cars per hour. Yeah. Okay. And we had really good success with that. That really helped move our flowers. So what we did was, there's millions of ways that you can do this, but we did $50 per bucket. So 1 bucket was required per carload. And what we used was an IKEA trash can. They're like $1.25 at IKEA. And so it's $50 for 1 bucket of flowers, and they can pick 40 to 60 stems roughly for that bucket. So it's still a great deal. But it was a lot easier on me because I didn't have to A, go harvest them, and B, worry about selling them and then they don't sell. And it's all about creating that experience. And we also threw in like feeding the chickens. People could come out and feed our 20 chickens. I got those dried mealworm bags, and every kid got a little cup, and that was great. It was great fun. So that really saved our farm this year by pivoting that direction. And we did pick your owns from, I think, May until late October.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it was great. So I think up until school starting in October, like we really sold most of our spots every day. So I used to know the math. I should have done this before, but 16, what is that? 32 spots a day times 4 times 50. It was good. It was good for us, and it really helped us get through the year that way. And even with the pick your own, like people don't care about the quality quite so much as I do. And so like people would cut stuff that I never would sell otherwise. So that was kind of nice. Not having to worry about the quality quite as much. We also did photo sessions. So once the restrictions started to kind of lift off, we were able to do photo sessions. And so we did sunflowers. So we went pretty big on our sunflower sessions this year, and we offered them, I think it was May to October. And we actually have about 2,100-foot rows dedicated to our photography sessions. So it's probably close to 2 acres roughly of space.
Wow.
So we succession plant them. And so each week we plant 3 rows per week. So that way there's a fresh crop. So we have enough for 7 weeks, 3 times 7, 21. Yeah, so we have enough for 7 weeks of flowers. So doing 3 rows is just enough for photographers to have like the depth illusion. You don't have to have 5 acres of sunflowers. Just having that little amount was fine. Some people made comments about, oh, where's all the flowers? But overall, everyone was just fine with that. We also put in a retail flower shop on our property. Yeah. So we had so that took the place of our porch pickup. So I think about June, we started realizing, hey, the retail flowers are working, our brand is strong enough, we can do this. And so we live in a log cabin. It's kind of a quirky log cabin. And there was a previous owner who enclosed the garage. And so we were just using it as storage. And the previous owner had it as a bedroom. And so we hired a builder friend to come and put in French doors. And so that's been huge for us this year as well.
So that's your retail store.
It's my retail store, yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so it's a walk-in garage, but we're starting to get it to make it a little bit cuter over time. But this year, it was only for pickups. And then we also have like a little section that's unreserved. And so it's like grab and go grocery store style. It's also self-serve. So the whole shop is self-serve. So I'm not in there manning it. No one's in there manning it. We have all the payment information. And then I just post on social media, hey, I have so many bouquets available. Come get them. And then people can still do the website as well. But we intentionally have our website set for day before orders. So it shuts off, I think, at 4 a.m. because that's when I get up. And I check my emails for my orders for that day. So we don't typically do same day orders unless it's just a special occasion and we're able to do it. But having that retail space has been huge for us. And people would drive, we're in College Station, Bryan College Station, which is about 120,000 people. And we had people driving from Houston, all over Houston, which is
wow.
60 to 90 miles away.
Yeah.
They just wanted to get out of the car or just get out of the house. And
go to a flower farm.
Why not? Yeah. So we had all sorts of people doing that. And that saved our farm this year by offering that. And it was quite amazing. I was really shocked by that. And it just shows how strong our brand is in our region. Because even though, like, sometimes I get frustrated, like nobody's watching, nobody's hearing me, but it's not true. Like, people showed up for us in a big way this year, and kept us going. It really kept us going. And so we actually brought in peonies. We are not able to grow peonies here in South Texas. And so I was able to buy from a farm in Pennsylvania, and then we actually brought in Alaska peonies as well. About every other week from June until August, we brought in peonies, and our customers loved having those. So even throughout the year, we've been able to partner with other American farms to supplement that shop when we either had a gap in production or it was a holiday and I needed more flowers or I had an event. So that's something else that we did this year is we added in wedding and events. I hadn't done very many of that before. Before this year, I was doing mostly wholesale to florists. But all my flower shops were closed. And I also realized too, like just with my florists, they're very spread out. We're very rural here. And so my flower shop buddies or my customers are 30 to 40 miles in opposite directions. And so that's something that I learned through the pivot as well, is that I had to take a really good look at my channels, at my customers. And I mean, honestly, before the pandemic, I was making these crazy delivery routes, 30, 60, 90-mile routes, and the sales weren't great. My sales numbers weren't great. And so I had to make those hard decisions this year to either pause or eliminate going to those shops just because of distance and because just the sales weren't there overall. And so we had to change up those channels to sell our flowers this year.
Well, let me jump in because I have a couple questions before I forget them.
Yeah.
Like in that situation before COVID, did you have a minimums for these deliveries? I mean, you're going 30, 40 miles. I mean, there's fuel, there's vehicle upkeep, there's employees, there's insurance, there's all those expenses. Did you have a minimum?
It was not enough.
Okay.
Short answer, it was not enough. So I did have a minimum. It was $100
Okay.
with a $20 delivery fee.
Okay. So you
And
were charging
usually
delivery. So,
I was.
and that's, I mean, that helps, but it by no means covers the whole thing, I know. So go ahead. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Oh no, you're good. And even time, like
Right.
going that far, like that's 2 hours of my time, and it wasn't worth it. And so I will say now, like across the board, I'm raising my prices across the board for all of our stuff for 2021, just because I know we're gonna talk about this more, but I have just a better understanding of, okay, this is what my minimums are, this is what my costs are, and that's something I've been doing this whole year, as I've been diving into my numbers a whole lot more and making those hard decisions of, okay, this is worth it, this is not, this is what I need to focus on. So we added wedding and events design this year. And so during the pandemic, I started getting asked to do small weddings, elopement weddings, families doing weddings in their backyards. Sometimes I had 24-hour notice, and a couple of times I only had 2
Wow.
hours. 2 hours, and I mean, thankfully I was able to go out to my farm and throw together a little bouquet, and it really worked. And so of course I didn't want to say no. You don't want to say no in those situations, and I had the flowers. And so we've done probably 15 weddings this year, not having it on the business plan, and that's been a huge learning curve. For sure. I thought I thought I could handle it, but there's been pretty significant learning curves along the way of how to do the weddings, and even I just did a big one a few days ago last week, and I didn't charge enough at all. Like they weren't ready for us. I had to wait around for like 6 hours. Like it was just a total mess. And so it wasn't great, but it was, the learning opportunity is there for next year. And so, now I called a farmer florist friend of mine who's over in Austin. And I was like, okay, I know I'm not doing something right in my pricing. And we were able to figure out that although I was marking up my product appropriately, I was not adding in like the design and installation fee appropriately. And so, I mean, it was about 20% difference.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And especially for these big weddings where you have to have team members to help you, because it was about a 40-hour.
I apologize.
You're good.
Usually when this thing happens, that just happened, it tells me, but it didn't. And so I'm looking, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, all right. So usually.
So it's usually about a 40-hour work week, putting together a large wedding like that. And so that's been a huge learning curve for me. Is, okay, I have my farm I have to manage as well. And then I'm taking on these big weddings. I need to have my team in place to help me so we can, not have to work 40-hour, not 40 hours, but 18-hour days to be able to launch that wedding.
Well, and I feel like too that when you've done this a time or two, you start to ask maybe different questions or better questions, or okay, if I'm working with a wedding planner, then there should be some, there shouldn't be 6 hours of waiting time in that situation, and perhaps it's just part of learning it, and
Right.
Hats off for jumping in with both feet and trying to figure that out. Do you feel like that? Because I feel like sometimes this is a question people wonder when you have pricing for, like you've talked about pick your own, but when you have bouquets or you have your pickups with your retail situation, do you price things differently for your wedding work now? I mean, now that you've had that conversation and you realize the difference, do you price the flowers differently? I mean, obviously there's other costs like the labor, but I'm curious how you are approaching that.
We do, yes. So for weddings, I am pricing, I'll take I have an account at a wholesaler. And so I take my wholesale price from them and even mark it up 10%. And then I do my 2 times markup for weddings. Because it's really a premium. It's not across the board for everything, but it's like the majority, especially my focal flowers. And then that way I know too, like if I get in a bind, if a storm comes and mows down my sunflowers, I can still order from my wholesaler and not be out money. And so I still price my stuff at like the wholesale level, if not a little bit above, just to have that margin. And then just like a normal florist would, I'm doing 2 to 3 times that markup, and then my 20 to 30% design fee on top of that. And so I learned that a lot this year. So even with my retail shop, we are kind of doing the same thing. And I'm going back to my spreadsheets and looking at what my costs are and going into, so if somebody goes through our website and they do a reservation, that's usually like for a mixed bouquet. So it's $25 for a mixed bouquet most of the weeks, depending on what the recipes are. Sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 25, depending on what those recipes are. And so these are just for little simple 15 stem mixed bouquets, like just what you would find at a grocery store. They're nothing fancy. And so those are, if you do a pre-reservation, it's a higher price. And then if you do a grab and go grocery store style at the farm stand, it's usually $5 less. And so I'm also taking into account that they're coming to my farm, which is out in the woods, it's out in the boonies. And so I don't take that lightly. But my margins are still higher than if I was partnering with a grocery store. And so I'm been comfortable with that. And then people can order through our website small, medium, and large vase arrangements, as well as bouquets as well. So we have we're trying to meet different budgets as best as we can with different options.
I know people listening, some probably cringe at the idea of a double markup. And I get that. And I think that especially for weddings, that there is a higher stake in the game, because this is a big deal to a special event. It's it's that moment that it's not just about grab and grow. There you go.
Yeah.
Grab and go bouquet. But I feel like that's one of those things that some people probably, I mean, if it were me, I would always recommend people base your wedding prices on, I love the idea of the wholesale situation, because in a way you're selling the flowers to yourself, right?
Right.
And so you want to make sure that you're getting the premium dollar for your product. And yes, that's almost like a separate business in a way. And that creates an extra buffer. But I know that, a lot of people believe in 3 and 4 time markups. And I think it does depend on your overhead. But I think, though, you have to be careful, because at some point, my fear would be that you could be more profitable doing something else if all you're making is that double. And so you just really have to look at it. I'm glad to hear that you talked about the 30% design fee, because that's another piece that a lot of people forget about. It's like you're doing that. And I think that's awesome, because unfortunately, a lot of people think, well, that 3-time markup has that in there. And as we've heard from many guests this year, no, that design fee is it's really your markup on your labor, which is okay. That's, if there's no other industry I know of that doesn't make money off the labor too. Maybe they don't get to charge sales tax on it or something, depending on the state you live in. But I think that's really great. And that's interesting. I never really thought about that, though. They are coming to your farm, which maybe some people would say there's value in that experience, so don't discount it. But at the same time, if you're not around the corner, you don't want to make it more challenging on people. I really love that idea. So let me back up for 1 second. So in the past, you sold mostly wholesale to florists. And if I recall correctly, did you have one wholesaler, like flower wholesaler you sold to, maybe two?
I had one and it was occasional. It was very occasional. Yeah, our production numbers were not consistent in previous years. And even this year, we were not as consistent as I was hoping to be. And some of that was just because of COVID on their end and on our end. And so but this coming year, so we sold to them a few times this year if I just had an excess amount of sunflowers. So this coming year, 2021, I'm hoping to partner with our wholesaler a whole lot more on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Well, so go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, we have 30 designers on our email list that I send out every week, and I usually have sold to anywhere from 5 to 10-ish of them on a weekly basis. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's a sizable bit of income. I mean, you know, especially this year. And then in the past, you also did the porch sales, correct? Where you could book. Was it an appointment-based situation then, even, or was it just, you know, we have these available and you can prepay for them and then just come grab and go and you put names on them, or how did that work?
It wasn't a specific time frame, but it was a specific day. So, hey, I want to come pick it up on Tuesday. Sometimes I would ask for their time, and then anyone that has a reservation, we have a bucket for them with their name on it. And that way they can mark it off. Yeah. So initially I was thinking about having like a sign-off sheet, but because of COVID, that's a contact precaution. And so that went out the door. And so our system is working right now. It's not great, but especially with the contact precaution stuff, that's just challenging. So what we're doing right now is okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's some trust issues you have to, you know, work through with both your people coming to pick up. And I guess that's also a good thing about having the website ahead of time. They can go ahead and pay for it. So at least that part's handled. You don't have to worry about contacting or touching money or making change or all of that. More contact points to kind of get rid of.
On that note, so I'm now only allowing reservations by our website only. So before, through our website, you could do a cash option. And so you could reserve but not pay. And I had one lady who reserved $100 worth of peonies, and she did the cash option, and she did not show up for like 3 days. And so that was the end of it for the cash reservations. So now prepay with a credit card, and then we'll reserve your flowers. So that was a hard lesson. I think we had that happen a couple of times, but the peony, $100 worth of peonies was the end of it for that. So.
Yeah. And it's always interesting. I always find it funny. I know years and years of being in wholesale, you always have these situations and people don't understand why you're so inflexible, or why you don't understand their situation. And you know, it's funny because you have to sit back and say, well, unfortunately, we got burned enough in these situations that it became a liability for us. You know, we're not dealing with you know, toilet paper and paper towels. You know, these are things that are perishable, especially peonies in the summer that are so premium, and South Texas is nice and hot. So you're kind of, you know, obviously you have coolers, but it's still that's a lot of money. And you just, you know, that's why these rules happen. It's because you get burned, and it's sad, but it's true. But I mean, in a way though, it does keeps everybody honest, and it keeps everybody above board. So that's great. I mean, I understand it totally. So that's interesting. Okay, so I know just from following your feed that on Instagram that you are pivoting in a new way this year, and through scaling your business. And so that's got to be scary. Tell us about that. Tell us, what does that look like in the world of Georgia Monroe?
Ooh, it's wild. It's wild. Yes. So scaling has been a goal from the beginning. I
Sure.
will say that. And so, yeah, so each year, so I'm finishing up year 3. This is only year 3. We're going into year 4. Praise the Lord for that. So scaling, yeah. So we got started, I would say our first year was about half an acre. Second year, an acre. Third year, this year, we bumped up to about 3. And a lot of that was with our sunflower production. And so that's where we are really, we're scaling across the board with our flowers, but the sunflowers are our main one. So going into 2021, we're going to be scaling to about 7 to 8 roughly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. And so I don't do anything small. And I've known that from the beginning. And so it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. I will say my goal is to harvest and sell 400,000 sunflowers next year. So it takes a lot of space. It takes a lot of planning. I'm spending a lot of time in front of spreadsheets right now, and ordering seeds and trying to just get our seed schedule, our planting schedule, like on par, because this really puts us into the large farm category. So yeah, it's really scary going that big. And then even also like our team, we haven't talked about my team yet. I hired a team this year, and I realized I've had like part-time help off and on throughout the time, but really this year, like it became an essential. It really became essential to have a team. And currently I have about 7 team members, and
Wow.
one of them is well, 2 of them are about 30 hours a week. And then the rest of them are about 4 to 10. The majority of them are students. 2 of them are not students. Actually, one of them is a horticulture graduate from Texas A&M. So he has that horticulture background. And so he is my production guy, my production manager, associate manager. We'll call him an associate manager. And so he really has helped me focus on maintaining that seeding schedule. He helps me with my plantings and harvesting. And so he's more the production guy, and then my girls are more of, they do the bouquets for me. They help me do the seeding if needed. Everybody does weeding. So we have a new rule. We have a new rule that everyone does about 30 minutes of weeding per day that they come. And going into 2021, I think we're going to do like assigned rows. So everyone has an assigned row. They're responsible for that row. So that's a huge help for us going into this year. And especially with my daughter being at home so much,
Right.
and like us we hired babysitters kind of off and on throughout the pandemic, depending on if there was an upswing or not. And so like that was challenging. Like sometimes I had my daughter in my pickup truck with her laptop doing online school. And anyways, it was just crazy. So she's back at school now. And so back to the scaling, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that gets done next year. And so we have 2 coolers. We had 2 coolers in place. We put those in 2019, fall of 2019. So we have 2 10x10 coolers. And so I'm pretty confident that we can move those flowers quickly. And so with the scaling, we have about 5 different channels that those flowers will go through. And so we are planning on selling at least 1,000. I have my minimal goals, and I'll share those minimal goals with you for this year. And so I think we're going to surpass them, but at least I can plan, okay, this is my minimum. So my wholesaler distributor in Houston, I'm going to sell $1,000 worth to him every week. I have my designers. I'm hoping to sell 1,000 to them every week. And then we were going to do $1,000 in sales through our retail channels. And then we also have our wedding and events that are off the farm. And then we have events that are on our farm as well. Mm-hmm. And so we do have a pavilion. I'm not sure, I think I mentioned it in my last podcast, but we had not publicly launched it yet. So right. We launched it during the pandemic, which is not great, but we've had a little bit of interest in it. And what we want to do with the pavilion is offer it for small events. And so small weddings, 100 people or less. We've done some customer appreciation events with local realtors, corporate parties. I just did my Christmas wreath classes there. We had 25 wreath classes over 3 weeks. That was mass chaos, but it was great. And then we also I did a 300 person sorority event in November. And so with that event, we did a giant, it was crazy. We split them up 100 per hour, but we did a giant bouquet bar. And so we had 3 different stations for bouquet bars it was a mother and daughter event for a sorority group. And so the girls funneled through and made their bouquets. And so talking about volume there, we did 150 bouquets. So it was a very simple $20 bouquet or $25 bouquet, but it was about 3 stems per flower. So that's still 150 times 3, 450 stems per flower that we supplied or I partnered with I bought from our wholesaler who got American flowers for me for that event. That was crazy. Yes. So, wow. So scaling, the cost, I'm looking at my costs right now. I'm plugging in those numbers on my spreadsheets, looking at, okay, what's the irrigation cost? What is the compost cost? What are the seed costs? My seed cost is tripling. And so, okay, funding is now, how do I fund those projects? How do I work on my cash flow in, cash flow out? It's a lot. It is a lot. And so
one thing, let me interrupt for one quick second. So you said that your seed cost is tripling. Is that just because of the volume? You're buying that much more seed, or is it the actual cost of seed? Because I haven't followed that this year with the pandemic going into next year. If the cost of seed has changed at all because of just overhead or scarcity or whatever.
The seed costs overall haven't changed a whole lot. My primary supplier retired. He retired and sold. And so now I'm actually having to shop around, and I'm working on getting relationships with other suppliers. And so I'm kind of in a middle limbo of what is that going to look like? And that's actually my big project for this week is looking at those seed costs. I think they are going to go up maybe $2 per 1,000. We can do math real quick. $2 per 1,000.
That doesn't sound like much, but when you start saying 400,000 sunflowers.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So my seed costs are going to go well into 5 digits this year. So it's going to be, it's a lot. And so that's just the cost of doing business. And I'm hoping to get well into 6-digit sales this year overall. So that's exciting, but it's very risky and very terrifying as well. And I'm also still fighting the deer. I haven't know that I told you about my deer issues. So I think in October we've never had problems with deer before. And I
was going to say that because I remember asking, I think I asked that in our first interview because that was one of my nemesis is that the right word, or nemesis? These tall-legged rats that go around eating everything. So anyway, go ahead. So now they found you. You're a buffet. They found
us. Yeah, we are in a drought right now. We're in a pretty good drought. And so they found the salad bar. and they ate. I was understanding that the deer would only eat the little baby sunflowers, but those things ate full-grown sunflowers this year, and
They'll
so
take a
they're
bite
that.
out of your flower. You can have a flower that's, like 2 days from opening, and they'll take a chunk
Yes.
out of that. And yeah, what's really
Yeah.
bad is I had a friend that was a grower, and they even fought wild turkeys. And they
Oh
would go
gosh.
in because they direct sowed their sunflowers, and the wild turkeys would go in and start eating the seed out of the ground practically. How they knew where it was, I have no idea. But anyway, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you taking steps to what's your game plan for battling the deer? The deer.
Yes. Yep. So we have three options right now that we are just trying to consider and look into. So option one is a fence. A high fence is out of my budget. A high fence for about 7 acres costs about $50,000. That is out of my budget right now. So our one option is to look into a double electric fence. And so Texas A&M has done some research on that. It's basically 2 separate fences that you put about 4 feet apart. And the theory is that they won't jump it with the depth perception. So it'll be electric. So that's about $2,000 for what we're looking at covering. Option two option two is we have gotten a special permit with the Texas Parks and Wildlife to be able to hunt the deer and harvest them and donate their meat as an option. And we can do that out of season. And so it doesn't have to be end year season. We have the option of hunting them year round. So that's nice to have. It's not what we want to do, but it is an option. Option three, my husband has had a grand idea the other day that has to do with like motion sensors and a drone and trying to scare the deer off. So that's an option that we are looking at. He's emailed Texas A&M, the engineering department, to see if they can help us with that technology, which would be really cool if it works. I'm kind of skeptical and leaning towards the fence option. So we'll see where we end up. So also with the scaling is water. I am actually having to put in, I'm not yet, but my goal for the year is to put in a new water well where we're expanding to. And so where we are currently, I have a water well that services our house and our barns, and that's been fine for where we are. But where we're expanding to, my current water well cannot pump it that far. And so that's another huge cost. It's about estimated $13,000 that would be for a new water well on that site. It's out of my budget right now, and so I'm hoping to start looking into some grants with the USDA, as well as what else? Like loan options with the USDA to either do that option. We also put in a I had some A&M engineering students help me create a water trailer. And so it actually has, I'll have to send you a picture of it, but it has two 250-gallon tanks, and it has a sump pump and a generator. And so I'm able to temporarily water those crops over there. It takes about an hour to fill up and then an hour to go through that pumping system. It's annoying as heck, but it really does work and gets the job done. So those are just all options that I think about frequently. Yeah.
Do you think, have you ever tried the CSA model as far as selling flower subscriptions?
Yeah, we actually are offering it.
Oh, good. I know, because a lot of times there's people who will use that to fund projects like that as part of the overall package, so that way they can do those capital investments and then feel it on the other end a lot easier. But yeah, the deer thing is a huge headache, especially once they find your tasty treats. That's crazy. I actually tried the spacing system at some property that I had rented for flower production many years ago, and I won't say it was super successful for us. It could be because we were at 3 feet apart, not 4 feet apart. And I know that that depth perception does make a bit of a difference. But we also weren't able to do a complete perimeter because of some forests that backed up to our property, and it was hard to kind of do that through there. And a branch would fall and break the circuit or break the
Oh, yeah.
it was kind of more of a maintenance hassle. So I'm curious to follow how that works for you because, yeah, that's a real challenge for sure. The one thing I think about when I think about scaling and some of the challenges you're facing, is this dynamic because I know there's a big push for the micro flower farmer. And I think it's sometimes people that are starting out. I mean, and I feel like you always had the intention of going big. It's kind of like what you said earlier. You were planning on that from early on. But I feel like there's a lot of people that are still in that hobby stage where they don't have to make that big push. And either it's the capital investment of the land or equipment, or depending on where they are, season. Um, you know, at what are your thoughts on, like, at what point do you have to make the decision, okay, I need to make money with this, and not, and I mean, and that sounds stupid to say because I know that everybody wants to make money, right? Doing this, it's something we enjoy doing, and hopefully that's part of it. But obviously, being self-sustainable and having that be the sole income is a challenge for a lot of people. And I'm just wondering, at what point can you say, okay, we got to, now's the time, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but now's the time to go from hobby to full-fledged farmer. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And maybe how do people evaluate that for themselves? That's a
Yeah,
big question.
it's tough. So I, whew, I remember hearing Triple Wren talk a little bit about that whenever you interviewed her. And so they kind of had that same trajectory. And her recommendations was to start small your first year, and then your second and third year, you really need to double, triple your production to keep up with those sales goals, especially if you want it to be a sole income for your family. And so it's really a personal choice. So with the small scale, the micro farms, I think it goes back to, what is your goal? Do you want to, is it to, as a business, I think as a business, your goal needs to have at least 100,000 in gross sales to be a business. Because then once you're looking at your expenses and paying yourself, what's left of that pie. And farming as a business, it's such a high cost of entry. Having that equipment, having the seed and plug costs and compost, like, it's never ending, right? Your expenses are really never ending. It feels like that all the time. I have a list on my phone of things I got to buy for the farm so that way we can keep going. And so what is your goal to pay yourself? Is it a side hustle where you're paying for your groceries? And that's maybe $1,000 a month, right? You're going to pay yourself $1,000 a month, and it's just more for something for you to do for fun. Or is it going to be a sustainable business where your sales are in the 6 digits or higher, and it's really a business where you're creating jobs. I want to be able to pay my employees well. I want to be able to give them paid time off, and I want to give them health benefits. Like, those are my goals. And so as a farm, there's so much yes, financial cost, there's a lot of hidden costs that people don't think about either.
Yes.
That go into that, whether it's and that's something else that I did not know going into it. And that's something that as we work with our bookkeeper, as we work with our accountant, they make me more aware of, okay, these are actual farm costs, which I wasn't factoring in, which then raises my goals, right? It raises my expenses, which then raises my risk goals of, okay, I have to, make an extra $10,000 to be able to pay for my mortgage, which in the beginning, and this is just for us, in the beginning for my farm, my husband has a nice job. And so he's able to pay for our mortgage and pay for those kind of expenses. But we've reached the crossroads where, okay, the farm, the flowers need to pay for that mortgage. And so for it to be a viable operation. And then also, paying myself and paying my employees well. And so all of those go into my expense planning for next year, which I'm doing right now. And I'm trying to do a better job of projecting, like per month, what are my big expenses that I need to foresee and plan my cash flow goals around those big expenses. So hobby versus, a big operation, there's people on Instagram that really portray it as being easy and being fun and floating in the flowers. And, what I see is, I have a lot of green fields, right? I'm a cut flower farmer. And so my fields are green because I'm selling all my flowers. And so those pictures that you see on Instagram they're not selling their flowers. That's what it comes down to. It's just for the pretty pictures. So, hobby versus actual business, that's something you just have to work yourself with. And I get a little annoyed at some of the Facebook groups, some of the micro farms, because, what is your end goal is I think what you have to ask yourself. And, are you willing, Michael Genovese at, what's his farm name? He's in Michigan.
Michael?
Is it Summer Dreams Farm?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's what it is. Anyway, so Michael, Dahlia May, Tara at the farm in Oxford, I saw them and I totally agree that, it takes, to be a successful farm, it takes $100,000 of capital investment with 10 years of time. And I think that's totally accurate. And I would even argue that 100,000 is probably very much higher, depending on what your expenses are. Are you going to, and I think with the micro farm, there's all these, numbers online, like an acre of flowers can put out, I would say on average, $30,000 to $50,000 of sales. But that's not including your expenses. And so that's just I think you have to know your numbers and then just go back to what are your goals. And then, like, if your goal is to be a micro farm, why not just be a gardener and take the pressure off? Take the pressure off of yourself of having to do all these sales and stress and deliveries and all of that business. And just be a gardener and have fun with it,
Right. Right. Or,
Yeah.
and you might find other ways to do things with the flowers, whether it's a front porch stand or it's something like that, where maybe there's less labor into it. But I know, like we did this interview with Jonathan Leese from Springforth Farm. It was sort of midway in season 5, and they consider themselves a micro farm, and they've decided they're focusing primarily on spring flowers because number one, the markup's higher. Number two, they felt like that gave them time as a family to do what they want to. It just depends on your goals. It's kind of like what you said earlier. And what they've been able to do in this short in this half a year, this how 5 month period, maybe more than that, obviously work wise, but selling flowers is, they're selling a more concentrated, higher ticket per stem item, and that works for them. And so you can become sustainable as a real farmer, a flower farmer, with being a micro farm. But it's like, the goals, what are the goals? And I think that number, that 100 grand, seems like a huge number to people. But I think when you sit back and you really add the cost up of, okay, land or labor or equipment or seed or plant material, perennials, woodies, whatever it is, it's probably there. It's just whether or not you have it to do up front, or you have to do it over, a 3 to 5 year plan as you grow your business, and you're just taking your profits. And a lot of people do this, they take their profits and then they just flip them into the next year. And, because they may have a partner that is providing an income to live off of for now, you're able to do that. But, not everybody's in a position where they want to do that forever, and how frustrating must it be to put all that sweat, blood, and tears, and to not walk away with a paycheck at the end of the year. I know, we're talking about the big picture. Of course, COVID is a whole nother situation. And, that's why we began by talking about pivoting, because it's such an important part of figuring this whole thing out is, how do you find different ways to become profitable? And I think it's amazing. I mean, it sounds like you've gone from basically having maybe 2 to 3 channels of income to having more like 5 or 6 channels of income. That's gotta, is that where the light bulb went off? It's like, I've got to hire more people because I can't manage that many streams of income all by myself and do everything else. Is that one of the reasons why you decided to start hiring more people, or is it, could it be, is there more to that? And then how do you decide, how to pay people, and then what can you afford? I mean, those are hard decisions to make. How did you approach that, I'm wondering?
Yeah, let's see. What was the first question? That was like a whole long list of questions.
Well, I guess first of all, I was just talking about the different streams of income, and that,
yes.
I'm curious, is that what led you to hire your team, the additional people?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. So the way we see our business too is that like the flowers are the main source of income, and then we have all these events and all these other that trickle in. So it's all under the Basecamp Farms umbrella. And so yes, it is a lot to manage. And like, I'm the sole operator of the farm. My husband has a full-time job off, and so he's really not involved in the day-to-day operations. And so I do think, like, I know there's some couples who do this together, and so having that partnership helps a lot with those responsibilities. And so I realized pretty quickly this year, especially, that I needed to start hiring employees. And also because of COVID too, like my time has been divided because my daughter's at home. So I have to take her priority into consider, or her education into, taking care of her. But then too, like me not working 14 hours a day, that became a real issue, especially with all of these events, which are at different times during the day. And that's another reason too why I price them high. I can pay a high school student $10 to go run the pick your own table. And she's happy to do that. And so our starting, it depends on what their experience is, what their age is. That determines what I pay them. Right now it ranges from, $10 for my seasonal help, who are part-time. A lot of them are college students. And so starting pay for us is $10. If they have a little bit more experience, I pay them 15 to 18. My highest paid guy right now is 18. And so I'm hoping to get that higher. This next year, I'm hoping everybody gets a pay raise, especially if they've been with me for longer than 90 days. You know, Seth is my main guy right now. He's been with me for a year. And so I'm hoping to increase his, you know, going into next year, especially with harvesting takes the most time right now, and making bouquets. So with the harvesting, I know on certain days of the week, I need to have more team members here, especially because we're in South Texas. And so we start harvesting at 6 a.m. Because we need to be done by 10 or else it's just too hot. And so, you know, that's where myself as the CEO, I have to look at my schedule. Okay, this is our task list. This is what we have to get done. This is how many team members I need on these days. And I'm also getting more picky. I'm getting more picky with my employees in that, like beforehand, I would just hire anyone that contacted me without really interviewing them. And so now I'm starting to get more picky. Everyone goes through an interview process. I'm learning the right questions to ask. And especially with paying them a little bit higher, I get a better quality employee. Whereas, you know, the minimum wage, it just doesn't always happen. So I've learned, I spend a lot of time now studying and listening to podcasts about team management because of how big our team is getting. And so even with like communicating, hey, these are our tasks. Hey, you're doing a great job. And just really creating the culture of our business, just like any other business does.
Sure.
I spend a lot of time reading books on that. And because I don't have a business background either, I studied nursing in college. And so this is all very new to me. And I probably spend at least 5 to 10 hours a week studying or listening to or sitting in front of my spreadsheets, which is a lot. It's no fun to do that, but it's really important for me to do that. Yeah, what other questions did you have in there?
No, that you covered them, I think. I feel like, you know, that's a hard decision for a lot of people to make, is when to hire. Obviously, you can't physically be in two places at once. I mean, that sounds silly to say, but you know, I know I struggle with time management for myself because I tend to always think things don't take as long as they really do. But I think also you having to deal with the heat. I mean, it might be frustrating for somebody to have to come to work for a 5 or 6 hour day, but I'm like, do you really want to work an 8 or 10 hour day when it's 100 degrees outside? I mean, probably not. So it's much better to have maybe a shorter day and work an extra day, or just go have a, you know, if you're in college and you need another job, then you go work another job in air conditioning for that hot part of the day.
Right.
Something like that,
Sure.
or you have classes or something. But no, I think that's really helpful. And I know I'm really excited because I know we're going to do a part 2 to this right now. We're gonna hit pause and we're gonna do a part 2. We're gonna try to tackle some more details as far as the actual nitty-gritty goes. So if you've enjoyed this conversation so far, please stay tuned for the next one, because we're really going to dig deep more on the farming side, less on the pivot side. So Georgia, thank you as always. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to hear the feedback on this, because I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, Scott. Have a great day.